to the final research nugget on integrating research into practice. This nugget will focus on teaching and learning research. Probably one of the most important influences on adult education, teaching, and learning came from Malcolm Knowles in 1984 when he suggested the 4 principles of andragogy, the art and science of adult learning. I think you will find that these principles still hold true today. Knowles suggested that adults need to be involved in the planning and evaluation of their own instruction. Experience, including mistakes, provides the basis for the learning activities. Knowles suggested that adults are most interested in learning subjects that have immediate relevance and impact to their job or personal life, and adult learning is problem-centered rather than content-oriented. As we examine 4 research studies related to teaching and learning, you will find Malcolm Knowles' 4 principles integrated throughout. This research nugget includes studies related to contextualized college transition strategies, what works for adult ESL students, the use of growth mindset interventions to help when students experience academic difficulty, and improving adult literacy instruction in reading and writing. Today's research nugget will provide a broad overview of the research findings, just enough to hopefully whet your appetite for more information. After you view this research nugget, you will want to read the 4 research briefs for each of these studies contained in your activity packet that was emailed to you. The research briefs are relatively short, but we have also included URLs to the full report if you are interested in learning more. So let's begin by looking at the contextualized college transition strategies research, since this research will be related to our next face-to-face workshop with local directors on creating a career-infused program. This study, conducted by the Community College Research Center, represents the final phase of a multi-year evaluation of the iBest model that began in 2009. Based on fieldwork on 16 iBest programs at 8 colleges, this study sought to understand those aspects of iBest that best supported student learning, progression, and completion. The key findings from the study fell into 4 categories: program structure, instruction, student experience, and sustainability, scale, and cost. iBest programs appear to be highly structured, limiting complex decisions students must make about program and course selection, and offering support services and assistance in securing financial aid. However, the programs vary in effectiveness in enabling students to advance to higher level training and credentials after they complete the iBest program. A basic skills instructor and a professional technical instructor jointly teach iBest courses, yet the programs vary in the degree of integrated instruction and team teaching. They also employ contextualized basic skills instruction, particularly in support courses and learning labs. The study suggests that a high amount of integration may be less essential to the instructional approach than providing this combination of the 2 forms of instruction, both integrated and contextualized. Students responded positively to the structural components of the program design and to the instructional approach. iBest students expressed increased confidence and ability to succeed in college-level courses, and many were eager to continue on to additional credentials at the colleges. One of the major challenges for the colleges in Washington is the sustainability of iBest programs amid competing priorities, fluctuations in program enrollments, faculty and administrator turnover, and sharp cuts in state funding. Estimated iBest program costs vary widely and depend on several factors, including field of study, number of students served, and costs for instruction and support services. While it appears that iBest programs cost more on average than the total average cost for equivalent regular credits, the study also determined that the benefits of iBest programs approximately equal the additional costs incurred by providing the programs. The study concluded with the following recommendations. Programs that are designed to increase the rate at which adult basic skills students transition into and through college-level programs need to consider all of the possible transition points and identify barriers to a successful transition to further education. Furthermore, colleges need clearly defined, viable pathways that directly connect completers to their next step. As part of the process of assessing pathways and transition points, it is necessary to consider the readiness of students who complete the intervention. Program planners should consider the level of academic rigor and preparation that the program pathway requires. They should also consult with faculty who are teaching the next step courses to ensure that IBEST program completers have gained the skills and knowledge needed to be ready for post-intervention college-level coursework. Interventions for low-skilled students should place greater emphasis on incorporating both integrated instruction and contextualized basic skills instruction than on team teaching per se. This will not only help ensure strong instruction, but will add flexibility to program delivery. The IBEST model in Washington State requires that a professional technical instructor and a basic skills instructor are present in the classroom together at least 50% of the time. The study recommended that more flexibility was needed to allow programs to determine how much overlap in instructional time is needed, and this will depend on the field of study and the resources of the institution. Program leaders and instructors teaching in IBEST stated that planning was a critical but often overlooked component of the model. Given that integrated transition interventions like IBEST can be challenging to implement, it is important to incorporate adequate planning time for instructors. For interventions with more flexible approaches to instruction, in which instructors may not be spending as much time together in the classroom, joint planning is likely to be even more important. If you serve a large number of English language learners in your program, you will want to make sure that staff are familiar with the What Works study for adult ESL literacy students. This study identified effective instructional practices for improving the literacy skills of low-literate adult ESL learners. Conducted in 3 phases over 7 years, this seminal national study involved visiting more than 40 adult education programs and 75 classes across the country to interview and observe more than 500 students, teachers, and staff. The study's main research questions were: what are the characteristics of adult ESL literacy students? What are their English literacy and language abilities? What types of class arrangements and instructional approaches do teachers of adult ESL literacy students use? What classroom and instructional variables are correlated with improving adult ESL literacy students' literacy and language development? Does the relationship of class and instructional variables vary according to students' initial literacy level? What student, program, and instructional variables relate to class attendance and persistence? And finally, what changes in program design, resources, and instruction are needed to implement effective instructional approaches? The study included several important findings. Here are a few of them. The researchers found that daily attendance matters. The rate of attendance matters more than the hours in class. A student who attends class every day for 3.5 months will do better on standardized tests than a student who attends class sporadically for 6 months. The study also found that in classes where teachers use the native language as part of instruction to clarify and explain, students exhibited faster growth in both reading comprehension and oral communication skills. Since the directions for a language and literacy task are sometimes more complex than the language required by the task itself, for example, write your name and the date on the upper right-hand side of the paper, students who received clarification in the native language were able to focus on the task at hand, and the confusion and anxiety of not understanding the instructions were reduced. The study also showed that teachers must allow students sufficient time to practice material, to internalize new information. Students learn more when teachers balance their instruction and introduce new concepts within a framework of routine. Students also need a good sense of how English works to understand what is being said and explain their ideas in ways that at least approximate standard English. Teachers who drew students' attention to certain patterns and rules when appropriate and gave students a chance to talk in class without having to worry about accuracy at every step saw higher learning gains. Growth mindset is a learning theory developed by Stanford University professor Carol Dweck. Over 30 years ago, Carol and her colleagues became interested in students' attitudes about failure. They noticed that some students rebounded while other students seemed devastated by even the smallest setbacks. After studying the behavior of thousands of children, Dr. Dweck coined the terms fixed mindset and growth mindset to describe the underlying beliefs people have about learning and intelligence. When students believe they can get smarter, they understand that effort makes them stronger. Therefore, they put in extra time and effort, and that leads to higher achievement. While most of the growth mindset research has been conducted with children and adolescents, there are currently some studies underway with adult learners. In the meantime, you might agree that the findings from several of the other studies certainly sound reasonable to believe for adult learners. In The Mindset Interventions Are a Scalable Treatment for Academic Underachievement, the researchers built two internet-based mindset interventions. A growth mindset intervention designed to instill the idea that intelligence is something you can grow, and a purpose for learning intervention designed to instill the idea that learning in school can help you become an empowered adult, a person who can have a meaningful impact on the people and causes they care about. The study involved a sample of over 1,500 students from 13 different high schools. Each intervention was built as a short, less than 45-minute online module. Each online module involves students reading and writing about the ideas at the heart of the intervention. For example, for the growth mindset intervention, they read about intelligence being something they can grow, and they wrote about these ideas in their own words. The results showed that mindset interventions can be effective in a format that is easy for schools to implement, and that they can be effective in a variety of schools. Students who earned GPAs of C or below prior to the intervention, a key risk factor for high school dropouts, became 6.4% more likely to earn satisfactory grades following the interventions, and they earned higher GPAs across all 4 core courses. Do you think similar interventions would have an impact with your adult learners? At the request of the U.S. Department of Education, the National Research Council convened a committee of experts from many disciplines to synthesize research on literacy and learning in order to improve literacy instruction for adults in the United States. The committee's report, Improving Adult Literacy Instruction, Options for Practice and Research, includes a booklet entitled Developing Reading and Writing. This booklet presents an overview of research about how literacy develops, the component skills of reading and writing, and the practices that are effective for developing them. The principles and practices offered in the report reflect the best available research on effective approaches to literacy instruction. However, it is important to know that these principles and practices are derived mainly from research with younger students, from kindergarten through high school, because little research has been conducted on effective literacy instruction specifically for adults. Once again, this is where the judging part comes in. Is the research reasonable to believe for your program? That being said, the report does offer some excellent recommendations on teaching principles and practices. The report is organized into 6 main sections: how literacy develops, effective reading instruction, effective writing instruction, instruction for struggling readers and writers, instruction for English language learners, and motivation. The report offers recommended principles and practices for each area. Let's look at a few of the research-based writing practices. The report recommends that instructors should enable the assistance of peers in planning, drafting, and revising compositions. They should employ inquiry approaches to instruction that involve establishing clear goals, gathering and analyzing relevant information, using that information to structure and plan the writing task, and using writing strategies suited to the task. Instructors should teach pre-writing activities, such as making lists or diagrams prior to writing, which helps students generate relevant content and complete texts. Instructors should also analyze models of good writing, such as discussing the features of good essays and learning to imitate those features. Are these practices being used in your program? We're sure many of your instructors are probably implementing them. Remember what we said in the first research nugget about being more research-based than you might think? During this research nugget, you got a glimpse at some recommendations for integrated education and training, some strategies that work in English language acquisition, 2 exciting interventions related to the growth mindset approach, and the availability of research-based practices for reading and writing instruction. We hope that one of these studies sparked your interest and desire to learn more. In your activity packet, you will find research briefs on these 4 studies, as well as URLs to the full reports. You will also find some additional resources for your use. Please read the briefs before the webinar on March 19th or 21st. During the webinar, we'll talk about your reactions to the research findings, as well as make plans on how to share the research with your staff. To confirm your completion of the second nugget, there are a few questions you need to answer. Please go to this URL and submit your response. Best of luck.